Üstek has recently been appointed the new director of DRAFT, the David Roberts Art Foundation in London. And if you were here just over a year ago, David Roberts actually gave a talk, so it's a nice kind of circular thing that I'm going to go on here. And in 2012, at DRAFT, she curated an opera in 5 acts, which is an incredible sort of a composition and approach to curating and making. I urge you to look it up. And we're really excited about the ways in which she'll lead DRAFT in the future. Üstek has curated numerous acclaimed international exhibitions and events, and they include the 10th Gwangju Biennale in South Korea in 2014. This year she's curating My Art Talks, and she was also the chief juror for the Celeste Prize in 2017, the juror for the sculpture section of the 2017 Arte Laguna Prize in Venice. She's a founding member of the Association of Women in the Arts, which is a great organisation, a trustee of Art Nights, which we'll talk a little bit more about this evening, a member of Block University Advisory Panel, a member of the International Association of Art Critics in the UK, and she's also an alumna of the Independent Curators International. She's the founding editor of Now Is Work, Contemporary Art magazine, which she founded with Veronica Howard, which is a really great resource for articles. I again recommend reading that. And that was between 2008 and 2012. You can see it, you can go online. And she also regularly writes for a range of platforms. And if you go to her website, you can also read her creative work, which I've enjoyed reading, we've enjoyed reading, so I urge you to go with that. So, a little gloss on curatorial practice, which obviously you'll talk about in far more eloquent terms than I. But so for her, curating is a form of agency that activates the social and the public. Her work as an independent curator, particularly prior to her appointment as director of DRAFT, investigated multiple forms of, I'm not actually speaking into this, multiple forms of exhibition making and approached the practice from a non-institutional perspective. And in her work, she aims to investigate the potential for curating both with and beyond institutional parameters. And so in this talk here, we'll be focusing on the last 2 projects that Üstek has curated in London. Fig 2, which took place at the ICA, the Institute of Contemporary Arts in London, which was a composition of 50 contemporary art projects realised in 50 consecutive weeks in 2015. So that you can imagine that's a huge undertaking. And Art Night 2017, a one-night only festival dedicated to artistic experimentation outside the formal setting of art institutions that takes place the first Saturday of July annually. Again, it's an incredible thing. If ever you're in London, you can go and find art in amazing places around London. So both projects differ in scale and artistic activities and explore possibilities of alternative modes of curatorial and artistic production and institutional engagement, which Fatoş will talk more about. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you have a phone, tweet and Instagram away, but just make sure you're not buzzing around or you don't want to. Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome everyone. It's really a pleasure, and thanks to wonderful Rupert team, Üstek, Yates, Katrina, and also Egle I met today. Yes, thank you. It's really a pleasure. I actually always wanted to come to Vilnius, but life only brings you things that you come across it somehow. It hasn't happened up to date, and Yates kindly introduced me. I'm thrilled to have received such an extensive research and engagement with my practice in what I find crucial and urgent to say. And those urgencies manifest themselves as exhibitions, as kind of, let's say, unconventional projects such as the opera in 5 acts that also Yates mentioned, which was a kind of a fragmented production of a gigantic piece that responded to DRAFT and the collection exhibition that took place in 2012 when they moved to their new spaces. And it is really not planned. That David Roberts was speaking here last year, and I come afterwards. The appointment and my start of my new role has only happened 28 days ago. So I've been on a roller coaster in the sense of like it's so very exciting to look at the institutional realm, but at the same time to really make sure that I keep connected with what I find significant. And as Yates also mentioned briefly, I have been questioning institutions or, let's say, organizations and foundations and their role in the arts. And especially today, I really feel we have to be even more critical and even more sensitive to looking at what are we producing as foundations of art, as institutions of knowledge production. And as radical as it could be, I think the future holds place for content shaping institution, let it be architecturally, semantically, emotionally, and what I feel is that to kind of like to increase or popularity of contemporary art nationwide, and like in many countries or internationally, the institutions take the primary role of shaping or defining the parameters for artworks. Today I will be talking about, yes, two main projects that I've done, which has kind of brought me a huge reception in London. Let me first go here. So this is my website. It still needs a lot of updating, but you can definitely find some of my writings and also exhibitions or publications and different consultancy roles and teaching. So I do operate in many different domains or many different fields, and it's not because I chose to, but it's actually like it's how I found these different fields responding to what I need to produce. When I teach, it's a bit experimental. I'm more like a guerrilla teacher. I like poking with students and asking them to take more risks or be unconventional. And then after I leave, the course teachers really get angry at me because, like then students want to go wilder and they want to do things that are actually not possible in the, remits of the university, etc. Because I also, I do not really believe in colloquial reproduction of knowledge. So I think it's really important that we all come from, as well in this room, there's a huge body of knowledge that is currently present. And through dialogue and through exchange, we have the potential to grow it. And my knowledge does not precede yours. I have a different field of experience. Expertise is a bit of a funny word, experience, than you do, but I think it's really important that if we could cultivate and nurture conversations and cross-learning, I think that's how we could proceed in making things happen in the scales that they need to. Anyway, with my curating, as you will see, I have quite an experimental approach, but also with writing as well. I do tend to oscillate from creative writing. One of my prizes to date is I'm currently contributing writer for an erotic art magazine based in Rotterdam called Extra Extra. And to have this kind of covers in the text that I philosophically mumble about pleasure and play, totally from art historical or art conscious motivations or drives, to feature in this magazine is quite something. But I was telling you so recently that just before that I recently did an interview with Eva, Mr. Schulten, and it's also another field that I feel free to explore. So basically, I think freedom is quite an important term for me, or it's quite a crucial way of being in life. And of course, we can talk about freedoms. We can talk about philosophical demarcations of what freedom might mean, or what freedom might mean when we are under the rulership of language, etc., etc. But I think we do have respective freedoms, and in those respective, let's say, sub-fields, it's important to expand rather than shrink and contract according to what you think you should be doing, what you should be saying or thinking. We can discuss, at length about many other ideas, but let me introduce to you Fig 2, which we also have the publication that we will be circulating around, which was an epic project, and this happened to me after I came back from Korea. The 10th Guangzhou Biennial was an incredible learning curve, in the sense in which I had the pleasure of working with Jessica Morgan, who used to be the Daskalopoulos Curator of Contemporary Art at Tate Modern, and since 2015, she's a director of Dia Art Foundation in New York. And she has an extensive knowledge, and with the Guangzhou Biennial, what we attained was again a freedom in a way that we wanted to make a giant show, but that actually made sense. It was accessible to the people who were inherently from that country, from that part of the world, and extending or exceeding to many different realities. And it was called Burning Down the House. It was quite political, especially I was closely working with A.A. Johnson, and we had a pagoda, like a traditional pagoda, which was charged by gay energy and kind of shamanic rituals, and also a lot of naked pictures of men, beautiful men, and we were thinking we would close down the next day because this is a bit too much, But everything worked fine in a way, and it was a really good experience of how can I say, growing your sensitivities even at a larger speed. And when I came back 2 weeks after, that I didn't have, my next big project, and that's also something that I really, as an independent curator, I have felt the stress of a lot, because whatever you do, you're always asked, what kind of scale of project you deliver, you're always asked, okay, what's next? And then, as if you don't need time to breathe, have a moment of hiatus, space to reflect back, and also, what is really important is that I do work a lot with, speed, or I'm quite a, hello, my colleague from Goldsmiths actually, so I work a lot with speed and with kind of spontaneous responses. I love problem solving, etc. But I think it's really important to take space or take a breather for whatever you do, just to make sure that it doesn't become a template that you apply in your next project. Today we criticize some of the, let's say, celebrity curators because they have a comfort zone, they have a immediateness of artists, so wherever they go, they, you see that less of 10, 15 artists appearing in those shows. It could be Venice Biennial, or it could be, any other biennial in the world, etc. And I don't want to be that, and I don't want to do this. And yes, it's much more challenging because then, you're less comfortable in your zone of activities, but at the same time, it is much more rewarding in the long run. Anyway, it's a long introduction to Fig 2. So after 2 weeks of waiting for, okay, what should happen to me now, or what should I be doing now, and also Korea was incredibly, how can I say, exhilarating experience, but also it was quite consuming. You're in a language that you can't really access. I was literally repeating sounds that people made to me, and it felt like a conversation. And so you come back to a world where you can actually be much more active in the way you express yourself, etc. I received an email, and that email was like, oh, we are planning to do Fig 2, which is a reiteration of, or a revival of Fig 1. Fig stands for figure, and the title is borrowed from Marcel Boethouwers, as he mostly tends to name his works as Fig 1, Fig 2, Fig 14, etc. And Fig 1 was quite a, also right here, a groundbreaking exhibition program. It was initiated by Mark Francis, who is who is the co-curator of Magicians de la Terre in Pompidou, and his name has been always behind the French curator, but he's been a very interesting and important curator in London, and he was working at Dauphin, and afterwards he decided, okay, he's going to go independent, and he came up with this formula of 50 exhibitions in 50 weeks, 1 week, 1 show, 1 artwork at a time. And he was also close friends with Jay Joplin, and Jay Joplin was, at the time starting White Cube. As you might see from the lineup of artists, most of them ended up working with White Cube. But what Mark Francis did was borrow a work of art, mostly existing, from the studios of these artists who were young, like Bruna Islam had her first solo exhibition in London after graduating from Goldsmiths, or Hussein Chalayan, a very young fashion designer at the time. But he kind of interspaced them with giant names such as Richard Hamilton, or Anish Kapoor, or Mola Hatoum. And each of these artists would have a week to showcase what they were doing. And what he did as well is that he invited Richard Hamilton to show a work that is not complete on the first week of Fig 1. So it was actually a sketch of photographs of his partner at the time going into the bathroom. And on week 50, he actually showed the completed painting as the exhibition. So it was like a very, nice bookending of a giant undertaking. So I was presented to, and then, things worked out, stars were aligned, so I started thinking about Fig 2. And I was only appointed 2.5 months before my first show opening. And ICA was going to host us, and they gave us the RCA studio, but it was not in a condition where you could immediately go in and start showing artworks. So we also had to kind of work with architects and rethink how the studios, it was carpeted, so we had to, rip the carpet off. And one thing, I am really, sensitive to space and spaces, and as you might all know or follow, in architectural theory as well, the spaces shape us and build us, and we might not realize that, but it's almost like a subliminal conditioning. So it's really important to also kind of produce spaces for art experiences where that experience or that spatial experience becomes a supporter of the art experience. And in that regard, I was like, and it was a space that is actually, we had lower ceilings, it was like a bunker, but it was almost like this size, it was like 100 square meters. And of course, if you are going to do 50 shows in such a contained space, you only have a handful combinations of hanging artworks or showing artworks in the room. I come from a maths background, and I studied like abstract maths and topology, and I think that really helped me configuring Fig 2, because I had many kind of objectives for myself. I didn't want to repeat an exhibition in its manifestation. I didn't want to have a singular presentation of artworks, but actually kind of configure Fig 2 as one giant whole. And mostly I give the example of like this, a giant house with 50 rooms, each room opening to one another, leading to one another, that differs in size, scale, color, senses, etc. And I don't know if you know the game of like snakes and ladders, where you drop the dice and you're number 49, but you go all the way down to number 2 because that happens. And so I wanted to also kind of like introduce cross intersections, or almost like different threads that spanned or crossed through the whole programming. So this was my curatorial statement, and I also thought Fig 2 has to respond to 2015. Fig 1 was actually about activating what was happening in London, or what was not happening in London. I don't know if you're familiar with the history of London, but up to the 90s, it was still in a very classical mannerism towards art. So sculptures and impressionist paintings were defining the market. And contemporary art was something that people would sometimes showcase, but not necessarily engage. So all these artists in Fig 1 actually had a space to explore and to showcase their works, which kind of led them to do big exhibitions. And so for Fig 2, I thought we should have this also kind of an immediacy. And that was like a huge framework, which also, as you read here, I wanted Fig 2 to become a study of aesthetic and critical currency of our times. You know, what kind of exhibitions do we look at? What kind of art moves us? What is it that happens between us and the art and the encounter that, you know, fits into that liminal space? So this was quite a big framework, but that was also how I invited the artists. And one other thing is, Fig 2 had almost all the sponsors were private and philanthropic. So Outside Contemporary Art, maybe you might have heard of, is a philanthropic organization operating since 2002 and has 8 chapters across the world where they, through an institutional body or a curator, they commission artists and or maybe they support the commissions, the new commissions of the artists, and then they gift those new works to museums that the profile of the collection would fit or suit the artwork. So Outside Contemporary Art was the driving force in Fig 2 happening because Candida Gardner, the co-founding director of Outset, her introduction to London and contemporary art was through Fig 1. So she was actually studying at Sotheby's, she comes from a lawyer background, etc. And she started speculating Fig 1, and 13 years after, she actually approached Mark saying, hey, should we revive it? And then Mark said, okay, if you can find the budget and the place, let's think about it. And she did raise the budget through inviting Vista Village to be one of the main sponsors. And Vista Village is a retail values shopping centre in Oxfordshire. Basically, it is all these like high-end fashion brands like Gucci, Prada, Alexander McQueen, Celine, etc. And they sell the last season's products with 30% discount. And that is the second best visited venue in the UK after Buckingham Palace. So in a year, they receive 60 million visitors. They all go mad to shopping. And anyway, so Vista Village, an unconventional sponsor, became a sponsor of Fig 2. And when Outset was collating all these funds, nothing was given. There wasn't a space, there wasn't a curator, and there wasn't a program. So they kind of managed to lure the support to the imagination of the project, even though it didn't have any kind of pillars to be referenced to. And Philips Auction House, another unconventional sponsor that I ended up working with at ArtNight as well, that they were one of my main sponsors. And then we had individual patrons who were patrons of Outset that supported a day, a week, or a month of programming. So what they did, and I think it's a very interesting funding structure, where they calculated the whole budget, and then they divided it into 152 days. And then they came to an amount, and that would be the daily expenditure of Fig 2. And so the individual sponsors would give that expenditure to become a patron. And then the Art Fund was supporting my position at Fig 2, so it was a curatorial, almost like a bursary that they gave, and RCA was our hosting partner. So we also had, of course, many in-kind suppliers, such as Brighton Corners, who designed the website, and Universal Design Studio. So I didn't finish my word about how you can move and shift the space. So when I was thinking, okay, what is the possibility of making kind of an uncountable number of presentations in that fixed room. And I was looking at different exhibitions, and of course, like Documenta 67 had these mobile displays, which were a bit outdated at the time because it had like metal legs and only like a panel that kind of was held by the metal legs, etc. But I asked 3 different architecture design studios to come up with mobile units that we could move in space on a weekly basis. And the Universal Design Studio came up with these walls that you will be seeing soon. And System Independence Spirits that I'm going to show as well is our drinks partner. So Fig One had Bex as their drinks partner, that there would be 200 beers at every opening. I didn't want to have a beer. And it's also, I don't know if I could claim credit for that I sensed the upcoming of gin consumption in the UK. Because, when we approached System, they were a new company. And today there's 235 gin companies. They're all independent companies. There was a shift of legislation, so that now you can start your in-house breweries. Bit like, I don't know if you know the gin crisis of England. Like gin was actually, gin and oysters were the main nutrition for masses, and that actually people would brew gins in their homes, but then they would also go blind, sadly, because you can't always make the measurement of alcohol right, etc. Anyway, so 6 million Independent Spirits was like really young, and my approach to that was, can you come up with 50 different gin cocktails for 50 weeks? And they said yes. And they have, actually, he looks like Harry Potter, they have this genius guy who works in their distillery, and he makes all these things and tests and etc. But our cue to them was each art week, the artist of the week would give the description, the feeling, the definition of the exhibition, and then Smith would respond with a cocktail. So I'll show you that too. But yeah. And this is my team. We all look like a folk dancing group. This was the closing party night, so we were slightly off our heads. And just to give you also a brief wilderness into my weekly schedule. So it was a very small team. Basically, I had 2 assistant curators, Jessie and Eve, and a project assistant, and Giovanni, who also looks like a singer here, but he managed our autumn call and publication assistant. So our weekly schedule was intense. So Fig One had a Sunday off, so they would close the show on Saturday evening, and then Monday evening they would open again. But since we were at the RCA, and since RCA is a public institution, they said, no, you have to be open on Sundays too. So we would close the show Sunday 6 p.m. and open a new show Monday 6 p.m. It is only 11 hours because they kick us out at 11 p.m. on Sunday night. They don't say, oh yeah, of course you can work until morning. No. So we had to leave to come back. And that in total makes 11 hours for an install. And then on Mondays, so we would also have a picnic. Candida was really, I have to say, as a patron, she was so engaged, and she really became part of our family. And she came up with this idea of picnics, and with her cook, they would prepare a lunch for us every week. And so she would come and she would have a preview with the artist, ask about the project, and then I would time it for 20 minutes, and I was very strict because no time to lose. And then we have 20-minute lunches, and then until 5 o'clock when our Iceman comes, we were just running around in space. And I loved the Iceman because it was a bit like Alice in Wonderland's rabbit, it really told us. It was like our reality check. Are you ready? He would bring 2 bags, 2 bags of ice. That was our cue. If you're not ready, and if it looks like we need 3 hours to go, then it would be much faster. Or if you're chilled, then we would go to the disabled toilet to change your clothes and to look presentable. And then of course we had the opening. And the openings were always quite engaging. I don't know, it's Fig 2 started with a huge push because Fig One had a huge legacy, and like we were on BBC primetime news, and there were also like we were on The Guardian, and I was on radios, etc. And then they were all questioning, and they were excited about, okay, what's going to happen? Because of course, if I go back, Fig One's artists were really seminal. When we look back from now to year 2000, Mark Francis did a depiction of future greats. So everybody was expecting I should do the same. And in that regard, I'll pass these ones on as well. Oops. Basically this is the weekly basis. So I would have some time on Fridays. I made sure that I would have a studio visit and learn new artists. But all the others were like really booked in with so many different things. Basically, what I wanted to do is I wanted to work with artists that I haven't worked with before. So 70% of the artist list at Big 2 is artists I've never worked with before. 30% I didn't know their practice until 2015. And for me it was really, really important that I don't come with my, comfort list. And as Archbound was my supporter of my position, they wanted me to do like a monthly tours for their patrons. And I thought that was a bit boring. And since it's Archbound and since they're supporting the curatorial position, and to make things harder for myself, I came up with the idea of a curatorial seminar. And it was an 8-part curatorial seminar where I'm looking at the urgencies of curating today and what are the significant notions and terms that we should be looking at, from responsibility to politics of display. And I would do these seminars, these 8 seminars were spread through the year, and it's all audio recorded, and you can also access it today on the website if you don't get tired of hearing my voice. But every seminar would have a reader, and it also had a different audience. Basically, it tapped into the academia and students who were studying curating or artistry, or people who were interested in engaging with theory. They were quite heavily theoretical, that sometimes my team would be lost in space. But it was important for me to produce Big 2 not only as a visual domain, but also as an intellectual, critical domain. And these were the other things. And one thing is, of course, I was given a carte blanche. And I think for a curator to receive a carte blanche is a huge privilege. Basically, they told me, this is the budget, it wasn't that much, and this is the space, and then this is the number of people you can employ, and deliver, and you have to just do 50 shows. But they didn't tell me about, of course there was expectations of, what are the hottest artists in town, but I didn't want to do that. So there was nothing else, and nobody I didn't have a board to discuss my selection with, etc. And for me then it was important that I wanted to pass this carte blanche to the artists. So I would go to them to ask them, what is your innermost desire? What would you love to do that is outside or alongside your current practice? That but what you would love to do, and can you do this? And then of course they would come up with crazy ideas, and I would get even more excited and more crazy. And then so it would be like a performance on the night, and then we have to do we have to film the performance and edit it throughout the evening, so that the next day it becomes an installation, or there would be a heavy metal concert, and the next day we have to wake up at 6 a.m. to change the floor because it's really in really bad condition, and things like that. So after the year, we never counted these, but at the end of the year, we counted that we had 148 performances, talks, and events alongside 50 openings. So it's a bit a lot, and I think I was also in that kind of, ta-da, that's the artist. So I think I was also in that mode of let's say what we need to say in whatever form it is, and how much energy or labor it requires, it won't matter. So this is the artist list, and I'm going to show you a glimpse of that So you have to imagine that this all happened within 11 hours. So this was our first show, and I wanted to start with a female artist. It's Laura Eldred, and I wanted to start with a female artist who was known in London. Am I too long?
No, it's just like this is pink close.
Oh wow!
You just need to wiggle the wire.
Yeah.
Alright. That's nice though.
It was nice before, so we didn't say anything.
Shall I put it back in?
Yeah, maybe.
So Laura was like really actively engaged in London, but yes, perfect. But she never had a solo show. So I thought it was important to start first with a female artist. Secondly, an artist that is not so well known, because everybody was really expecting me to do a big smash, like who's the next Richard Hamilton, and I was like, hey Laura. You know, and she was at the time working in Mexico, and 2015 was also a year of Mexico and UK, etc., etc. But this is a work in progress. This is not the exhibition, and we confused many people, including some really high skilled journalists, that they judged this exhibition as a complete exhibition, which was only a sketchbook that manifested as drawings on the wall, or rugs that, you know, like Laura got them produced with the native communities in Oaxaca, etc. And that was followed by, I'm just going to do a quick rinse through it, just to show you how the space changed actually. Normally this is a GIF, but it doesn't play on my computer. Yeah, and this was the end project of Laura, so I bookended with Laura as well, and this became a 2-channel video. Okay, I already talked a lot, and we haven't even gone through the projects yet, but perhaps let's do something. Okay, yeah, of course, there's now some big features that I will tell you about. But so this is the website, it's big too. So I should talk about 2 projects before I quickly whiz through Art Night. Who wants to give me a number between 1 and 50?
32.
32. It is lovely. But we could also it is quite okay, let's try. Maybe we will reach 32 here. No. Okay, let's do like this. So yes, this is a very good thing. I used to remember the numbers, but okay, so this was with Orit Ashery. Orit also has been, again, working quite extensively in London, and then she was working also big commission with art angel, etc. But she wasn't really so much in the radar at the time. And last year she won the German award as well for the work that she started at Big 2. And Orit is a very active artist. Maybe you might know some of her works, that she actually has an alter ego as a Jewish man. And then her kind of coming to name was this photography series where she looks as a Jewish man to her, or his breast, and naked breast, etc. And she's a very active LGBT activist as well. And she was looking into the legacy of what happens to LGBTQA people when they die. Because when you have a partner, and because you're not legally bound, you can't leave your, you can't inherit all your wealth to your partner. And also, if you're an artist, it's even worse because then you won't have an estate or someone to look after your work unless you have a strong gallery representation. So, her project was called Revisiting Genesis, and this became a TV series. It's a very nice TV series that she completed, and it is again looking at this relationship to death. And she wanted to interview or do the casting at Vic to people who feel close to death or who have quite a significant health problem that they might soon die. And then this range across ages. So we transformed the space into a casting studio where we had busts, bronze busts by Dora Gordine, who was also a very significant scholar, and she's again now being rediscovered. And then we inserted some works by Orit into the furnishings of the casting studio, where the night before, that's what I mentioned, we had a death metal concert by Anoxide. They are 18 years old. They are loud, and I have disturbed the Queen and got my warning because of this. And so we had a mosh pit, and I think it was for me also very interesting to kind of look at, extensively to what performance is today. And during the concert of Anoxide, we had New Noeta, it's an artist duo, and they came with blistering lights, and then they were carrying these bamboo sticks and dead fish on their dresses, and they were also throwing some dead fish onto the audience as they kind of crossed the mosh pit and then went out into the streets. I see it smelled of rotten fish for a long time, and that was also not good, institutionally, but that happened. Okay, one more. 24. 24. If I remember the number, let's say. Yeah. This was another very nice. Okay. 24 was Ben Jug, and he's very much interested in narrative and storytelling, and he had a residency in Iceland, and he wrote prose about being far and close. And he wanted to work with people who operate magical lanterns. So these are from Victorian times, and then there used to be these kind of like a folk tale where the magical lanternists would travel from town to town and deliver their stories and project the, like a colored filtered photographs onto the people. So we reenacted this structure where we had 5 musicians kind of like hidden in the crowd, and 3 magical lanternists, basically activating the prose that Ben wrote during his residency. And so the dancers would have their clothes, and they would really open it up to become screens and close it down. We have a video of it as well, if you want to see later. But it was quite magical. And the other, well, yeah, exactly as you can see here. Oops. Jumping. Yeah, there's more. I mean, basically the website is the archive of all of the projects. And on the night, we have filmed it again with 3 cameras, and the next day it became a 3-channel installation in the space. So this was also quite a big undertaking, but it was quite exciting. And one other thing, I would make an interview with each artist of the week by end of this week to look back what happened and what was their dreams or what was their intentions and aims, how much did they reach it, and how much was it, basically it was about looking at the work that was produced at Picture. And in that regard, Picture was really for me a space where I wanted to explore not only still exhibitions, but sometimes artists would come and be almost like on a residency and continuously produce work in a cumulative manner of performances or through narratives or storytelling or making drawings or sculptures, Or sometimes it would be that we would open the show. Actually, the closing day would be the real opening day, where that whole week was used as the production space. I will do one, and then we will move to Art Night, which is absolutely different one. But this one is quite a special one because it had many complications in its nature. So Eva Grubinger is an artist, sculptor that she's based in Berlin, but she has a very close relationship to London. And she was, so basically I would invite artists, mostly from London, but sometimes artists from Europe, Milan, Berlin, Vienna, etc., who had a strong relationship with London to kind of to tap in. Also artists from Scotland or Wales as well. So Eva wanted to work with this concept of Black Diamond Bay. She was very much interested in, Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, but also the club scene of London, etc. So, and 4 times a year I could expand to use ICA Theatre, which is a huge black box. But the capacity is 450 people, and that has a total different production scale and reel, etc. So for Eva, we could use both sides. So this is our studio, and we shipped a ginormous blender from China. It took us a long time to convince the company to actually give us one, because they normally sell in bulks and for container ships. And then every time we talked to someone from the same email address, the English level was a bit different. And what I was very much interested in is also like this, object to wear, or the ready-made idea, is this giant fender became a sculpture where it expanded into the space of the studio. And then in the theatre, we kind of set it up in a way that there was a raft, almost like in Joseph Conrad's books, this kind of like tranquil space of the ocean. And this was like a contemplative space. Like sometimes we would find audiences sitting there, we had to kind of like pull them out to, close the doors, basically. But it was really, it was quite an experience. Anyway, so let's move to Art Night and watch a video. So Art Night is I can also do some of these later. Art Night is a one-night-only festival that started in 2016 in London, and the 2 co-founders are from Paris, and they wanted to model it according to the Nuit Blanche in Paris. But Nuit Blanche in Paris operates with music, theatre, contemporary art, performance, etc., or performing arts. And Art Night is only concentrated on contemporary art. And it was about looking at extraordinary sites or historic venues, and basically commissioning art for spaces that are not immediately institutional, or stripping art off its comfort zone as well. And in a way, exploring to the city. So I was so very lucky to work with Whitechapel Gallery and to work at East London as my borough. Because every year the formula is, the first year in 2016, the collaboration partner was ICA, and Cathy Noble curated the first iteration, and the Westminster area was the area for the festival. Second year was Whitechapel Gallery and East London. This year, Ralph Rudolph is curating Art Night, who is also the next curator of Venice Biennial, and it's going to be in the long trail of South Bank, Vauxhall, and Battersea. So it's a nomadic festival, and it of course picks up the venues in the region of it. So I'll just make you watch the night. It's only one night, from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. Do I need to turn this on? Sorry. Okay. Thank you. quite nice because I kind of lived in the moment again. So it was quite an epic night, and I had a year to prepare. I'm going to just show you the
Yeah, I guess I just find it kind of hard to relate to people because I like.
Nothing follow up. And semi-finals. Oh, no, not this one. So, yeah. So for Art Night, the formula was again 10 artists and 5 new commissions and 5 existing works. And of course I didn't follow it. So we had 11 artists and 9 new commissions. And our evaluation report for Art Council England, my team wrote, do less better next year. But we can't really help it. So this was our area. And so it kind of spanned through Shoreditch High Street to Tower Bridge. If you know, London is quite a big area. Basically, I put Whitechapel Gallery in the center of a 1 kilometer radius. For me, it was really important that people can walk from one side to another and also feel that they can, like they are among others. So for Art Night, I had many ideas, and it was really important that I myself and my curatorial team had a thorough research, historical, sociological, artistic research in the area, so that I didn't want to only make a festival that is kind of like comes from out of nowhere and creates a verticality, dips itself in and leaves, but I wanted to kind of create a horizontal way of relationships. And in that regard, I did a main program of like 11 artists in 13 different venues, but we invited artists, institutions, galleries from the area to present a proposal that responds to the thematic framework of the festival. And we received 109 applications who were either like galleries based in the area or curators who were working independently. And we selected 60 projects that were to happen on the night concurrently during the festival. And of course, it created an immense atmosphere and feeling that it really became a festival. I don't know if you're familiar with like Bakhtin's conceptualization of the carnival. I really wanted to, it wasn't an exhibition in the sense that there is a binary of like seeing and being seen, but I wanted to create a three-dimensionality of also being in the space of the artwork, or in the space of other audiences. And what I wanted to create through the commissions was that I wanted to make a sequence of situations that you would go in and out of, that would again change in its extensive conceptual and artistic rigor. So my theme for Art Night, which was not announced but is going to be announced with publication, is Fusion of Horizons. I don't know if you're familiar with Hans-Georg Gadamer. He's a philosopher of hermeneutics. He worked a lot with Heidegger. Actually, he was Heidegger's student, and Heidegger didn't like him that much, didn't think of him highly. But after 20 years later, they kind of wrote books together on theology, etc. And Gadamer's book, Truth and Matter, is one of the, actually regarded as one of the 3 most important books of the 20th century. And it is a very amazing book. It's so hard to read, but if you have patience, it is rewarding. And he has come up with a term of fusion of horizons, where he's looking at the horizon as an epistemological and also as a visual concept. Horizons are the endpoints. Actually, they make us see that they are the limit of our sight. But epistemologically, it is the limit of our aspirations, dreams, and desires, and also our knowledge. And what he says is that when there is a genuine conversation between two parties, could be two people, two friends, or two communities, or two groups, or you could grow it. When there's a genuine conversation, he says that the limit of knowledge, limit of aspirations shift and change and fuse. So neither my horizon nor yours stays intact. And that is also how societies are built. And he also says that, actually that book is really beautiful and so timely in the sense that he also proves that monoculture is an impossibility. He says we can only produce knowledge when there are differences. If we were the same, there would be no understanding and there would be no knowledge. Hence, monoculture is actually an impossibility because if we were all the same, then there is no culture. Anyway, so with my selection of the artists, sometimes I would choose the venue and then the artist, and sometimes artist and the venue. And I wanted to again kind of like provide a huge variety of experiences to the audiences. I'm just going to quickly whiz through and I will make the artist talk this time. So for instance, in Lithuania used the Basque Chamber, which is an incredible venue. I was so proud. This was one of my venues. Basically, it's like one of the picturesque, it's incredible. And the Basque Chamber, there are two Basque chambers on the left and right leg of the bridge. And if you know a chamber, basically, if the bridge is open, there is no space. But when the bridge is closed, then there is this cavernous space. It's like almost like a natural amphitheater. It is a dangerous space because this beautiful white steel is 14,000 tons. And actually, Cornelia Parker used the Basque Chamber for her commission at the V&A, where she crushed First World War instruments. Like during the First World War, there would be the bands that would also kind of introduce the arrival of the military, etc. So it's quite a dangerous space. And with this space, we made groups of 50 people invisible at a time. Of course, in theory, but also as a gesture. And that there was like a light and sound installation, and it's a borrowed technique from Stasnans, which is a cult that also Bauhaus was really inspired by. There would be this kind of like almost meditative space that you would go down into a spiral into the belly of the Thames, and then you would be under the river and basically made invisible through a technique that was introduced to you. And I will make the artist talk, but this was also our other venue, which is St. Catherine Docks. It doesn't look like it is in London. It really looks like a French Riviera moment. And there are super rich people who are living on these boats, or on these like warehouse / lofts. But this used to be the storage area of dockyards for the trading. And this was like an island that I thought would be really resonant with Charles Avery's ongoing project, The Islanders, which since 2004 he's been imagining this, or he's been working or drawing or sketching or manifesting ideas or thoughts from that imaginary island that he's going to explain. And so it was about expanding into the space of the St. Catherine Docks and making his imaginary island live for one night. Almost like, I don't know if you watched Twilight Zone, that was one of my secret pleasures when I was growing up. And so I really felt, or like Kurt Vonnegut, that kind of transolidification where the characters that you read in the novel can come in front of you for a split second to go away, or maybe, there's also time travel, space travels, etc. So I kind of wanted to treat Charles's island as like a parallel universe, that some of its components were coming live on the night in this part of London, where we had actors who were impersonating the islanders, but they wouldn't talk to me because, of course, they're in that temporary transitional zone. We had an eel seller who was so grumpy because he had a huge hangover the night before, but really worked well for his role. And the giant tree rising up on the square, which, you know, the islanders, for instance, don't believe in nature, so the tree is made of steel, iron, and LED lights. And one of the things is the eating egg red bar is in the island, and this is one of Charles's drawings, but it was never detailed in his drawings. But in St. Catherine Docks, we transformed this Art Deco cafe into the eating egg red bar and gave 2,200 cocktails on the night to people called One-Armed Snake, that also one of the characters of the island, and Charles gave the recipe of. And Jake and Timothy Chapman were in this incredible, almost like a huge tunnel that actually was used for storage during the turn of the century, called London Docks, and it's now being transformed into a mini Covent Garden style boutique shops, etc. So it's also very interesting to work to have worked at East London, because the transition and the pace of change is quite dramatically breathtaking. But the Chapmans were commissioned for a 3-channel video, and he also has a band called Fun Hall, and he was performing unannounced during the night. And Ben Drew had a solo exhibition at Whitechapel Gallery, so we commissioned 8 experimental musicians to improvise and respond to the digital code that Benedict provided them. Lawrence Leck, this was quite an incredible one, but I will show you the work. This Whitechapel building is also kind of the future of corporations, where this was a former RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland building, and it had a really 80s style aesthetics. And this is the atrium, so it has quite a strong void in the atrium of spanning 80 meters tall. And this was actually when they sent us the picture to send to the artist, we were like, this is definitely Lawrence's work. Vilnius was more of a socially engaged project, where of course, it was really important to work with many different residents of the area. And Middlesex Street Estate is one of the 2 council estates that City of London looks after. So I was in City of London, Tower Hamlets, and a bit of Hackney. And Tower Hamlets has the highest number of council housing in the whole of UK. Whereas City of London only has 2, and this is one of them. And that still also is kind of like in that kind of like almost, it is a squeezed island between the Gherkin and the new city that's rising up at Bishopsgate. So we wanted to work with the residents of Middlesex Street Estate to also discuss about their dreams and desires and how they relate to the city. And Gunesh makes these kind of a series of workshops, a true series of workshops produced with banners, and that become, surfaces to voice the invisible or disregarded participants of community. Lindsay Sears, I don't know if you're familiar with her work, but she has a very strong esoteric practice, and we had this incredible Masonic temple in a 5-star hotel. This is a 1912 second degree Greek Masonic temple of the Solomon Lodge, and it is still actively used. It's so dark and it's charged. So yeah, you really can, I don't know how much you know about Freemasonry, but this kind of series of initiations, etc., you can really feel something has been happening throughout the century here. Anyway, Lindsay has also has a Masonic past, but has been working, and she made an incredible video that if you want in the future, I can send you a Vimeo code of. And Doho Su is a Korean artist based in London, and she's been working with identity, notions of home and belonging. And we showed the video of him in the Spitalfields, in Christchurch, Spitalfields. This was quite interesting. This is a Dennis Savage house. So basically, the scale and the historicity of the venues was quite extensive. Dennis Severs was a Californian eccentric that moved to London in the 70s, and without knowing, he kind of started accumulating ephemera from periods, like from 1970s to 1810s, 20s, etc. So this house in, okay, maybe you won't see it. This house in London is made of 5 floors, and the basement floor is timed in 1970. It's almost like a theatre. So each room is kind of time-coded and furnished accordingly. They were so keen to work with us. And it's really important in the sense that, this is a highly strong place. And it's so hard to imagine inserting an artwork here because this already has a very strong aura. And it's really important that you don't, engage spaces with artworks that, one or the other overwhelms or undermines one another. So it was for me quite a challenge to think of the best fitting work until I remembered this series by Chapman's. It's called One Day You Will No Longer Be Loved, if that should be the case. And what they do is that they collect these paintings from flea markets or, cheap auction houses, cheap auctions, and they deform the characters. So they basically imagine what has happened to them after they have died and nobody is loving them anymore. Because, our time span is not about actually our, immediate lifetime, but it's actually until the last person who loved us passed away. Anyway, so what we did was we inserted the 3 paintings from Chapman's into the house, but we didn't tell people. So it was so curious. Someone, sometimes they would come, I found one, it was really good. And then sometimes I found 5, Anyway, so it was also a very good a treasure hunt moment in that really curious space where it's loaded with ephemera. I highly recommend you to go and see. It's they only do candlelight tours. There's no electricity. They have also when it's open to public, the whole staging is that the family who lived in the house has just left. So you're kind of actually infiltrating into their personal space. And there's still the fresh brewed coffee, or the baked bread, or the cigarette, or the just recently broken cup on the floor, etc. So the whole thing is actually a huge stage in its own. I'll make Anne Hardy talk about her work, and Melanie as well. And the last one is the club night. Of course, Shoreditch is the clubbing centre of London. I thought we should also respond to that need, but also at the same time respond to that habit. But this time I wanted to alter it with inviting artists who work with music to respond to a club night. So Albanotto or Carsten Nikolai was our main lineup, and he, in collaboration with Boiler Room, did a staging at the Village Underground, and we invited various different DJs. So I'll just show you quickly some of the artists, and then I will I'll start let's start with Lawrence.
So the idea for the PlayStation is to think about a future world without work in a way that all jobs were simply play and all work was just disguised as a form of leisure, basically. The installation itself is in the Whitechapel building, which is essentially a rebranded and renovated former RBS building. So that's been renovated into this more digital economy-friendly workplace, startup-oriented environment. I'm reflecting on how the architectural form of the workplace actually, in some areas, starts to look more and more like playpens, children's playgrounds as well. This cloaking of what is essentially a labour environment that have the symbolism of play, but it's just still a workplace.
So what Lawrence did, as you see on the Pentagon, the yellow Pentagon, is that we had 5 VR sets. So he came up with this idea of a company and imagined that's heart chakra. Imagined this is the depths of my Google. Imagine the, how can I show you maybe? Okay, he imagined the future of London and that everything, because of AI and robots, there is no need for labor and everything is around play, so humans have nothing to do with play, and there's parts that actually cost.
Very good.
Oh, okay. So Parasite employs humans to play these basic games in order to kind of like for them to create credit, and then you can go on eat holidays, and then get bonus prizes, etc. So the whole idea was like kind of actually shifting the labor and play and questioning it, especially in today's corporate environment. And this is Anne Hardy, who was commissioned for a really large-scale installation that was composed of, she works with this concept of feel and explores the feel. It's a very abstract work, but quite immersive as well.
I'm making a new large-scale fieldwork. My fieldworks are immersive works that incorporate sculptural structures, objects, light, colour and audio. And I want it to be an emotional space, or thinking about it like a psychological space that's in physical form. A lot of the materials of my work have all been gathered from the street, from things that I found, or things that other people have kind of abandoned. So I'm interested in those things that in a way they're cut free from being specific. This is specifically that for that purpose. I think this time I'm working much more with the space of the street as a kind of studio, in a way. So we've been using street space or places that are found as kind of sound instruments. The fieldworks are very much about creating a form of choreography for the people that come to see them.
This was
Well, I'm making a new piece of work called Dance Online London, which is a formative and participatory dance event. I'm working with 10 different dance schools, and these 10 different dance schools represent each a different form of dance. And the piece really starts with each of these dance schools leaving their home in the East End and sort of streaming through the streets, converging onto the central dance space. They will offer dance lessons. At any point of time, you can learn 10 different forms of dance. And dancing is a very particular form, and one that goes right back to the beginnings of humanity. We've always danced. Dancing in the streets, kind of reclaiming the streets, inhabiting it through ultimately really joyful and celebratory activity. It's a very, very powerful act and a very powerful message. So I really hope that many people will come on the night and join in the lessons, dance till 5 in the morning, and enjoy the sort of the kind of celebratory spirit of the work.
So this was quite an incredible experience actually, in the sense that we had thousands of people dancing on the Exchange Square, which is a privately owned public square. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept, but London is actually kind of demarcated and owned by many private corporations, and they only give public access to their sites, but it's privately owned. It's not public or public space as such. And an Exchange Square overlooks Liverpool Street Station, and as you've seen people dancing, we had thousands of people, and we only had like 500 headphones, which was actually wireless headphones that you could pick a channel to dance, and then at a given time there would be 3 different dance schools, from reggaeton to Afro-Cuban to salsa, or 80s, or swing, etc. So you could pick the channel that you would like to learn to dance from, and you would dance. And then there was a time that like people exceeded outside the dance floor, and then even without headphones, they were like continuing to dance to the other crowds without music, without anything, without any instructions. And for me, what was really important in that sense was like it was a semantically political work. It was basically crowds saying, "This is our space, and we claim it, and we are here." Yes, I'll just show the island and then.
It represents the subjective rather than define the place.
But it's
ideas, because I was working in many different ways. I love philosophy, mathematical philosophy, I love drawing. But I just needed a governing system, a place to put all of these ideas so I could work them out. You can only go to the island. It exists in the subjective realm. It represents the subjective realm. And to find a place which is a kind of crossover between the objective world and the subjective world is for me like a ghost. Which in material terms means we're making one of the gods, and then they were taking over a cafe, a mulberry cafe, and St. Catherine's Docks, and then turning it into the bar of the eating egret, which is a famous landmark within the fiction. And then probably one of the most important aspects is this poster campaign, sticking bills all over East London. And when it comes to show times, I think it's made concrete that this is contact with the world, which is what's happening at night.
I'm just going to find a presentation to show you what they looked like when they were installed, because I think the one I showed was without installations. But maybe we can already start questions. Yes. Yeah, so this was actually what was it. Sorry that I didn't find it immediately. So the yellow ones are associate program, and the orange ones are main program. And then, like what was happening was on the night, we had 75,000 people on the streets until 4 a.m. in the morning. And the associate program, of course, brought their own networks, but it was quite an incredible turnout. I was speculating for 50,000 and already thinking that, oh yes, let's do it. But 75,000 was beyond belief. But this was like how Ian's piece looked like, or kind of a glimpse of Charles and the Grumpy Hill Cellar, and Jake's concert, and Benedict's installation at Whitechapel Gallery, and Lawrence's VR work installation. This is how he imagined London in 2047. And this is what also happened was like Gunesh's banner that she produced with the community that joined the workshops also became a permanent mural on one of the side walls of the Middlesex Street Estate. So if you go to London anytime, you can have a chance to see it. And this was how Lindsay's work happened. And this is a huge, I basically I can talk for hours, yes. And then this was one of the paintings by Chapman's that we inserted into the furnishings. And this was what Anne Hardy's space looked like, or Melanie's dance all night London. Especially dances like dancing through the streets was quite a highlight of the evening as well, and the club night, of course. And yeah, this is one of the gods from Charles's Island. It's called Da. It's a god of love and couples. And we actually hired actors of different cross-gender affiliations to go and canoodle. Canoodling is a word I learned through Art Night. It's a lovely word, and then so we are also encouraging our friends and family to go canoodle around the god. And the love box poster is totally unprecedented. It was just there, as it happened to be. Thank you.